Masechet Gittin, Daf Kaf Zayin. The topic today is returning a lost get. And what we have to worry about, maybe it's not the same one, it has same names, but a different person. Maybe this get was never executed. Can we return it to the women? Let's see. Mishnah Hamebi get v'avad hemenu mesa'ol altar kasher. You have a messenger who was bringing a get from one place to another, and he lost it. He dropped it. He can't find it. If he finds it right away, that's okay, because he can assume that he misplaced it temporarily, but it's in a short time after. Later on in the Gemara today, we're going to talk about how long that is, but let's say, 5 minutes later, he found it, he can assume that's the same one. V'im lav pasul, but if it took him a long time, looking all around, and it's only a while later that he found it, then he cannot deliver that get. He's assigned to deliver it, but now he can't be sure if it's the same one. Even though he opens it, and it says the same names, who knows, maybe it's a get with the same names, but different people. Right, a different Abraham and Sarah that happen to be from the same place, who also wrote a get, so he doesn't know. Now we're going to see what conditions this would be true under in the Gemara. Now this law that you don't return it, that's only if the get is loose. But if he had it inside some kind of pouch or box, or if he recognizes it, then that's fine, because he dropped it. It was inside his briefcase, and then even if it was lost for a while, but he comes and he found it's still in the same briefcase, then he can be sure that it's the same one and it wasn't swished with another get with the same names. Or if he recognizes it, and we'll talk later on also about what counts as a recognition. But the point is, he sees, this is the same one. I can see that it has markings that are the same. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Ur minhu. Now we have a contradiction between our Mishnah and another one in Baba Metzia. Baba Metzia is the context of returning lost items in general. You find a pile of money. You find a wallet. Can you return it to a person? What does he have to do to identify that item? And among the things that's mentioned in Mishnah there is a get. Masa Gittin nashim b'shichrurei avadim diatiki matanot v'shovarin hare ze lo yachzir shani omer ketuvin hayu v'nimlach alehen shelo litenan. That's the Mishnah. Someone found a get that for a divorce, or a document of emancipation of a slave, or a will of someone on his deathbed, or a certification of a gift, or a receipt that a loan was paid. All these things, one cannot return it to the receiver because we say maybe the sender wrote it, but then changed his mind and never gave it. For example, let's say I write a document of a gift to Mr. Cohen, and I write this field over here in this spot I'm going to give as a gift to Mr. Cohen. And then I decide, you know what, I changed my mind. I'm actually not going to give him the gift. But I already wrote the document. Now this document, I happen to be traveling, I drop it somewhere. You find it. Now you can't just go and give it to Mr. Cohen, because then Mr. Cohen say, oh look, I have proof that this land is mine. But actually, if maybe I never actually gave it to him, I just wrote it and then changed my mind and never gave it to him. And therefore, you cannot return it to Mr. Cohen. That's what the Mishnah teaches. And the same thing would be with a get. I wrote a get for my wife, but then I changed my mind. I said, you know what? I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to divorce her. And that get gets lost. You can't pick it up and then give it to the woman, because now she'll have a get. She can say, oh, look, see, my husband divorced me. He has to pay my ketuvah. I can go and marry out. But that not all that may not necessarily be true, because we have to first verify whether I ever actually gave it to her. So therefore, you cannot return it to her. Now, ha'amartenu notnin va'afilu lizman merubeh. We can infer from this Mishnah that if you would come and ask the husband or the gift giver, did you actually get, did you write this? Do you want it to be given? And if the husband would say, yes, give it to her, right? We are divorced. Or the present document, yes, give it to him. I do want to give that present, or I already did give that present. Then you can return it to Mr. Cohen, or you can return it to the wife, even after a long time. So that's the contradiction. And our Mishnah says that if someone finds this is a messenger, if he finds the get after a long time, if he finds it right away, that's fine. If he finds it after a long time, then you have to assume that maybe it's a get that happens to have the same names, but not the same get. So therefore, you cannot use it. Whereas in this Mishnah, the only problem is we're not sure if I ever gave it. But if you can ascertain that the husband did give it, then you can return it, and let's assume even after a long time. Now the Mishnah here does not actually say a time period, doesn't say a short time or a long time, and the Gemara will come back to that point in a little. But right now, since we're assuming, since it doesn't say any time, that would mean even after a long time, it can be returned. So that's the contradiction. We're going to see today 3 different resolutions to the contradiction between this Mishnah and the Mishnah in Baba Metziah. Here is resolution number 1. Amar Rabba, la kashya kan makom she'hashayarot mesuyot, kan makom she'en hashayarot mesuyot. Our Mishnah in Masechet Gittin is talking about in a place where there are many caravans. There are caravans that pass through. It doesn't have to necessarily be a caravan. Anywhere there's a lot of traffic. If I drop something in Grand Central Station, if I pick it up right away and I see it, then I can assume it's the same one. But if I drop something there, and then after 10 trainfuls of people come in and out, right, I come back and I find something similar, I can't be sure that that was the same one. Maybe that one was kicked away and someone else dropped another item that is similar. So I can't be definitely sure that that's the same one. That's why the Mishnah said if you find the get right away, that's fine, but if it's after some time, then no, you can no longer use it because there is a lot of foot traffic there. However, the Mishnah in Baba Metziah was talking about a dead-end street, a place where there's only a few people, that there's not a lot of traffic, and so in that place, you can assume that if you drop something in some place, even after a long time, you came back and found it, you can assume it is in fact the same one. And that's why in that Mishnah, the only worry is, wait, we have to make sure that he ever did give this get. But if he says, yes, give the get, then you can assume it is the same get as the one that was lost. Now we're going to limit the law yet again, even if there are caravans there and a lot of traffic. But that restriction, this chumrah, that you can't return it, is only true if we establish that there are 2 people with the same name in that city. Right? If this get is written in it from Efrat, and it says Yosef ben Shimon is divorcing, right, some woman with a certain name, and we have to go and check, and it's found in a place with caravans. Let's go and check. We'll check the phone directory of Efrat. Are there 2 people with the same name in that city? Right? 2 people named Yosef ben Shimon? If so, then and only then do we have to worry that this was dropped. There's 2 people with the same name from the same place, and there's a lot of traffic. So then we have to worry it could be a different get that was switched. But if there's only one person named Yosef ben Shimon in that city, even if there's a lot of traffic, you don't have to worry about it, right? So this makes a lot more sense than when we started. If you read the Mishnah by itself, it's like, really? Even in Grand Central Station, if I drop something with my name on it, even after a long time, I think I could assume it's the same one. Unless, in fact, there is someone else with the same name from the same area, all right, then it is possible that's not the same one. And here we're talking about allowing a woman to get remarried, the problem of Eshet Ish. So we really do want to make sure. So this is the answer of Rabbah, that when do you not, if either it's in a dead-end street where there's no caravans, or if there's only one person with that name in the place, then you can return it. Only if you have both of these conditions, that it's a caravan, I dropped it in a place where there's caravans, and there are in fact 2 people with the same name, then you have to worry that this is not the same one as the original. Okay, so this is Rabbah's answer, and the second distinction, that it's only when there's 2 people with the same name, this has to be true. Why? If you don't agree with this, then we're going to have a contradiction between this statement of Rabbah that he said above, with another statement of Rabbah. Dehu gita deishtakach bedina de Rav Huna v'hava ketiv be b'shviri mata de'al rachis nahara v'amar Rav Huna chosheshin l'shnei shviri. So here's the following story. We're going to include, Rabbah is going to come into it in a second. There was a get that was found in the Bet Din of Rav Huna. Rav Huna saw many cases, and there was a get there. And in the get, it said that this is from people in a city called Sheviri, which is on the Rachis River. Now, Rav Huna said, there might be two different cities named Sheviri, and therefore we don't know if this is referring to the Yosef ben Shimon from this city called Sheviri, or maybe there's a Yosef ben Shimon from another city called with the same name. And therefore Rav Huna said we cannot return this get to that person from this one Sheviri, because maybe it's talking about a different person from a different city. So Rav Huna says, do not return this get. Now Rav Huna is a second generation Amora. Rav Chisda and Rabbah are the third generation. They are his students. And Rav Chisda told Rabbah, Pok v'ayen ba de le'urta ba'ela minach Rav Huna. So Rav Chisda told Rabbah, the two students, one said to the other, go and look into this matter, because I know at night Rav Huna is going to ask you about this. In other words, this case came up during the day, and so at night the teacher would get together with the students and review the events of the day, and so he's going to ask you about it, so go and prepare yourself. So Rabbah looked into it, and he found another Mishnah in Masechet Baba Metzia that says any Maseh Betin is a certified document. It's a document that came to the Betin, and they certified that these signatures are correct, and they added a paragraph and their own signatures that this is a ratified document. Now, if someone finds a document ratified by a Betin, you can return it, because you can be sure that it was enacted, right? If there's a gift document says, I'm going to give this field to Mr. Cohen, and it's signed and has the Bet Din that ratified it, then you can be sure that I actually gave that gift, and I didn't change my mind. Otherwise, it wouldn't go to the Bet Din for ratification. Okay. והבדינה דרב הונא דכמקום שהיה שיירות מסויות דמה וכפשית יחזיר על מה יוחזקו שני יוסף בן שמעון בירחת אין ואילה לה. Now the place, the betin of Rav Huna, that's like a place that caravans go through. Many people come to the betin of Rav Huna. It's like Grand Central Station. So it's a place where there's a lot of people pass through. And Rabbah disagreed with Rav Huna. Rav Huna said, well, maybe there's two people with the same name. But Rabbah said, no, you don't have to worry about that. Rabbah said, if it's since it's ratified, it was surely given, and Rabbah doesn't worry about there being two people with the same name, and he says you can return it. So how could that be? So it must be that if there are two people with the same name, then there is a concern, and we cannot return it. However, if there's if there are not two people with the same name, then you don't have to worry about it. And so therefore, Rabbah, right, because we have to solve a contradiction. How come Rabbah in this statement said, if it is a place where there's a lot of traffic, do not return it, and yet in the case of Rav Huna, that is a place of a lot of traffic, and yet Rabbah said you can return it? It must be there's another distinction. What is the other distinction? That it depends on whether there are in fact two people with the same name, then you cannot return it. But if you go and check the index, the list of people, and there aren't two people with the same name there, then you can return it. All right. So now, Abad Rabbah Ubada Be'ahu Gita Ishtakach Be'kitana Depopadita Kishmate. There was, in fact, an actual story, an occurrence, and Rabbah ruled as according to his own opinion. This get was found in the place of flax, the house of flax. We'll see exactly what that means. Does that mean the factory or the store? in Pupadita, and he followed his own opinion. Now, what were the details? So there's two interpretations. Some say it was a place where they soaked the flax in the factory. There aren't a lot of people there. It's smelly, and there's only just a few people that work there. So that's a place where there are no caravans, and he decided to return the document in that case, even though there were two people with the same name in that city that was written on the get. But it doesn't matter because it's a place where there are no caravans. Or, or other people say that when it says house of flax, it was actually the place where the flax is sold, where the stores, meaning a place where there is a lot of traffic, where there are caravans. And he did return it anyway because he checked and he saw that there was only one person with that name in the city that was written in the get. So either way, there's two interpretations of the story, because Rabbah, it could have been either one. Rabbah permits returning if you have either or. Either it's a place that there's little traffic, or in that city there's only one person of that name. And that concludes the discussion of Rabbah. Now, we're going to see another question of Rabbi Zera, but he's just asking the question from a different source, from a Braita instead of the Mishnah in Baba Metzia. But the answer is going to be the same. So Rabbi Zera actually is going to say the same or almost the same thing as Rabbah regarding the caravans. Rabbi Zera, Rameh matnitin abaraita umishane. He has a contradiction, raises a contradiction between our Mishnah and a Braita, and he answers it too. Tenan hamevi get. He quotes our Mishnah. Someone is bringing a get from one place to other, and he drops it and loses it. If he finds it immediately, then he can assume it's the same one and return it. If he cannot find it immediately, only after a while, then he has to worry that maybe it's a different get that happens to have the same names and same place. Question. Urminhu. Here's the Braita. Masa get isha bashuk. בזמן שהבעל מודה יחזיר לאישה, אין הבעל מודה לא יחזיר לא לזה ולא לזה. If someone finds a get in the marketplace, and if the husband agrees and says, okay, yes, that's mine, give it, then you can give it to the woman. If the husband does not agree, meaning he says, yeah, I wrote it, but I never gave it to her, then you cannot give it to either party. You can't give it to either party. You can't give it to the woman because they may not actually be divorced, and then she's going to go and try to collect money with it. You also can't give it to the husband because maybe they did get divorced, and now he's going to use this as proof that, as a receipt, I paid the get, I paid the ketuvah. That's why she returned the get to me. So you can't, the finder cannot return it to either party until you go to court and figure out, are they actually divorced? Was the ketuvah paid or not? All right, that's the Baraita. We can infer. Ha bizman shehabal modeh mihat yachazir laisha vafilu lizman merubeh. If the husband does agree, and we know that this get was effectuated, then you can return it to the woman, even though it may be after a long time. So this is a contradiction to our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says if you wait a long time, you cannot return it. This Baraita says if you wait a long time, you can return it. Our Mishnah is talking about a place where there's caravans, there's a lot of traffic, and then we have to suspect that maybe the one that the agent dropped might have been kicked to the side, and someone else dropped another one with the same name. But in this Baraita, we're talking about a place where there's not a lot of caravans. It's a little hard because it does say shuk, which is the marketplace, but maybe some place on the side of the marketplace where there's not a lot of people, some side street. And in that case, since there's not a lot of traffic, you can assume that it is the same one. All right. Ika de amrev hu de la lihadar. Now, within the Bizera, there are some people that further say that, according to the Bizera, it's only if you establish that there are two people with the same name, that's when you can't return it. And that would be the same as what Rabbah said, right? So you have both conditions. In order to not return it, it has to be that there's a lot of foot traffic, caravans, and there are two people with the same name. And so Rabbi Zera and Rabba would be in agreement. Rabba lives in Bavel, Rabbi Zera in Eretz Yisrael around the same time. But there's other interpretations within the Bizera that he would say, even if there are not two people with the same name, still don't return it. And in that which case the Bizera is actually more machmir than Rabbah. They would agree with the caravan, non-caravan distinction, but would not agree with the huchseku distinction. And so that's the two interpretations within the Bizera. All right, Bishlamad Rabbah lo amar ki Rabbi Zera. Now, Rabbah asked the question from a Mishnah Baba Metzia. Rabbi Zera asked the question from the Baraita. So we're going to wonder why they didn't ask each other's questions. So we understand why Rabbah did not ask from the Baraita as Rabbi Zera did. Matnitin alima le, because a Mishnah is stronger to ask a question from. If you have a Mishnah is more authoritative than the Baraita, so it's a stronger question from a Mishnah. So it makes sense that Rabbah did not ask from the Baraita. Ela Rabbi Zera, my tama lo amar ke Rabbah. But how come Rabbi Zera did not ask from the Braita, instead use how come Rabbi Zera did not ask from the Mishnah, instead use the Braita? How come he didn't ask the same question as Rabbah? Amar lach, mikatane im amar tenu notnin afilu lizman merube dim amar tenu notnin kedekai malan da'atar. Because that Mishnah in Baba Metzia did not give a time distinction. It didn't say even after a long time, right? So does it say in the Mishnah that if the husband says, yes, give it, then you should give it back to the wife even after a long time? Doesn't say a long time. Maybe if the husband agrees, yes, I gave it, and you can give it to her, then you give it to her only after a short time. So you're adding an assumption in that Mishnah that's not written. That's why I prefer the Braita. Okay, Yirmiya Amar. All right, all that we saw was the answers of Rabbah, which is the same as the answer of Rabbi Zera. When that this contradiction between our Mishnah that says don't return it after a long time, and on the other hand, the Mishnah in Baba Metzia and the Braita that say you can return it. So one's talking about with our caravans, and the other one's talking about with there's no caravans. Now all that was answer number one. Now answer number two. Rabbi Yirmiyah says we're talking about a case where the witnesses say me'olam lo hatamnu ela al get ehad shel Yosef ben Shimon. We ask the witnesses on the document, right, on the get. You find those witnesses, and the witnesses say we only ever signed one get with this name of Yosef ben Shimon. So since they never signed another get with that name, then we can be sure that the one that he dropped is the same one that he found after a long time, because we're checking not only the name of the man and the woman, we can also check the name of the witnesses. And the witnesses say, we only ever signed one get with these names. Good. Now we ask about Yirmiyah. If that's really the case, then what's the chidush? Of course, this is the same one that you dropped. There's no possibility of it being a different one. Because you might have thought that we should suspect, maybe it could happen that not only are the names of the husband and the wife the same, but maybe there's another set of witnesses with the same name, even though they're different people. And it just so happens that the same man and the names of the couple and the names of the witnesses on one get are the same as a different couple with the same name and a different set of witnesses with the same name who signed a different get. So that's why Yirmiyah says, no, the Mishnah is coming to teach that you don't have to worry about that. Okay, and so that's the resolution of the two sources. That is, the Mishnah in Baba Metzia and the Braita, when they say you can return it, they're talking about a case where we see the names of the witnesses, and the witnesses say we only signed one document. That's when you can return it. But our Mishnah and Gittin is when we don't find the witnesses don't say anything, so then we cannot ascertain that these witnesses only signed one document with these names. It could be that the very same witnesses signed two Gittin with the same names, and then that's the case when you do not return it. It could be a different get that happens to have the same names. Now, that's the second answer. Third resolution. Rav Asher Amar, Kigon de Ka'amar, Nekev yesh bo besad ot pelonit, dehava le siman muvhak. The Mishnah, our Mishnah, is talking about where the person who finds it does not know any distinguishing mark. But the Mishnah Baba Metzia and the Braita that Rabbi Zera quoted, those are talking about a case where the one who lost it says, I have an identifying mark, that there is a hole next to that letter, right? That letter, when it says Hareat Muteret L'chol Adam Dehe, has a hole in the document. I remember there being a hole there, and if he says that, we check, there is in fact a hole there. That is a clear-cut distinguishing mark, Siman Mufhak. Good. And so that's why you can return it. But without such a distinguishing mark, that's in our Mishnah Gittin, you cannot return it to the woman. V'davka besad ot pelonit havale siman muvhak aval neke ba'alma la. Now we're clarifying what Rav Asher said. It's only if he said a hole near that particular letter. That's an absolute mark, distinguishing mark. But if he just says there's a hole on the get somewhere, well, that's too general. There's many documents with holes in them somewhere. That's not sufficient. Now, how come Rav Asher makes such a distinction? It has to be the hole in a particular place, not just anywhere. Because misapek aleh simanim ideoraita id rabanan. He's not sure. In Baba Metzia, there's a general discussion regarding simanim, a sign, a noticeable feature of something. Now, do you rely on that? Is that a deoraita law or a Rabbanan law? So if it's a siman muvhak, a very unusual thing, that's an absolute 100% that this is a clear identification, then that would work in all cases, but whether for financial things or even for a get where it comes to ishut. But if it's a non-absolute identifying mark, not a siman muvhak, then there's a machloket whether that's effective on the doraita level or the rabbanan. The difference is if it's effective only at the rabbanan level, that could work for monetary cases because the betin can say betin efker and they say, okay, yes, you have it. But if it's necessary on the doraita level, like for ishut, for a get, then it would not be sufficient. And so that's why Rav Asher says, listen, if it's only just a regular siman, a general siman, like a hole somewhere, that's not good enough, has to be siman muvhak. Okay, that's Rav Asher. Now, Rabba Bar Hana irkas legita be'midresha. Here's a story. One time, Rabba Bar Hana, he lost a get. He was transferring it. He was a shaliach, and he lost it in the Bet Midrash. Amar, isi mana itli begave, itibiut aina itli begave. And he said to the people that found it, he said, it's definitely mine. And if you want a siman, I'll tell you a siman. If you want just general recognition, I'll tell you a general recognition. So apparently he gave them both, and adru nihale, and they gave it back to him. Okay, Amar, le'ada na'im mishum simana adru, v'kasabre simanim deoraita, im mishum tebiut aina, v'davka subera brabanan, aval enash be'alma la. Reflecting on this case afterwards, Rabba Bar Hana said, I am not sure which one they accepted. Did they accept my identifying mark? And it was a general identifying mark, not a siman muvhak, just that there was a hole in it somewhere. And they gave it back to me because they think that even a general mark, recognition has a deoraita level, right? And that would disagree with Rav Asher. And they said, according, that would be a proof that even a general mark is considered deoraita. That would be good to know. These were, the great sages in the Bet Midrash who decided officially on a real case like that. But I'm not sure if that was the reason, or because it was a general recognition, right, of the features of the document. But the reason that they believe me is only because I am a rabbi. And so if it's another sage, you can be sure the sage will be very particular and honest, and we can rely on their words. But a general person will just say, yeah, that looks kind of similar, and then we can't rely on a general recognition for anybody else. So I don't know the reason that they gave it to me, and so therefore we cannot extrapolate from that story what the sages there held. Ve'im lav pasul. Mishnah says if it's not found immediately after a long time, then it's no good. Teno Rabbanan ezehu shelo alta. Now how long is too long? If immediately, after 1 minute, it's the same one. After a long time, how long is too long that you cannot return it? We have a whole bunch of different opinions. The amount of time it would take for a caravan to pass and camp. Not that it actually has to pass and camp, but that amount of time. He's using the caravan as an example, which is nice because we did say that the Mishnah is talking about a case where there are caravans, so it makes sense to use that terminology. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, remember that name, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. He says, "Kedeshi Adam Omed veroeh shelo avar sham Adam." So it's not a set time. It's as long as there is a person that's looking at that spot and sees no one passed by. If no one passed by, went down the street, even if let's say there's someone standing and watching for a whole day. It says nobody passed out by the whole day. I've been sitting here watching the entire time. And you find it at the end of the day, then you can still assume it's the same one. Or some say even more time, that even if someone passed by, but they didn't remain there, no one stopped there. There was a few people that walked by, but it's unusual to drop something while you're walking. Only if someone's stopping and standing, then maybe he looks into his bag and takes something out, and then he can drop something. So that's two opinions. So remember the name, Shimon ben Elazar, and a Yesh Omrim. It's not, we don't know who the name is, but a Yesh Omrim. So one says passing by, one says that no one even stopped there. Rabbi Omer כדי לכתוב את הגט, רבי יצחק אומר כדי לקרותו, אחרים אומרים כדי לכותבו ולקרותו. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says enough time to write a get. Not that anyone's writing a get, just giving you an example how long it would take to write a get. Rabbi Yitzchak says a shorter time, the amount of time for reading a get. Acharim say a longer time to write and read the get. That's how long shorter than that is considered immediately and you can return it. Longer than that, you cannot return it anymore. ואפילו שהה ויש בו סימנים מעידים עליו. דאמרי נקב יש בו בסד אות פלוני. And now just to summarize these laws, even if it stayed there a long time, if you have a definite distinguishing mark, and the person can say, yes, there was a hole next to that letter, then you return it even after a long time. But it has to be a distinguishing mark, not a general one, like regarding the body itself of the document. When you say, oh, this get is long, it's short. Okay, there's lots of things that are long and short. These are too general. Has to be something very specific. Kasher. If the person that lost it then found it and it was tied in a pouch or in a perch or in a purse, or it was in a ring, there was a ring around encircling it, and he recognizes it, or he found it among his other bags, it's with the rest of his stuff, it's in his suitcase, even after a long time, that is kosher, because these are all other identifying marks and make it basically impossible that this is a different get that just happened to go into his purse with the same names. That's impossible. So in that case, that's even if he lost his he didn't know where it was, but then after a while he found his luggage, he found this document in his luggage. That's fine. Itmar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Halacha shelo shaha Adam sham. Rabba bar Chana Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel Halacha shelo avad Adam sham. So now regarding the amount of time of how long is too long, so Rav Yehuda Shmuel said the halacha is that it's only if someone is watching and saw that no one stopped there. Shaha. That was the opinion of Yesh Omrim. Rabba bar Chana said, the name of Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel says, halacha is that someone was watching and saw that no one passed by there, right? No one even walked by the whole time. Then that's fine, even if after many hours, but you were watching. Okay, so that's what they say the halacha is, either that no one stopped or no one passed by. Now, a question about this formulation. Lema mor halacha kemor, umor halacha kemor. How come they repeat the content, shelo shaha adam sham? Why not just, how come it doesn't say, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha ki yesh omrim? Why not say just the names instead of saying the contents? And the answer is mishum da'afchilehu, because there are some that switch around the attributions of those two opinions, and therefore we don't want to say according to the law of Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel, But obviously, did he say avad or did he say shaha? So therefore, better to just say the content and take off the attributions, even though we always like to say things b'shem omram. But in this case, there's two different traditions about what omram, what they said. So it'll just be confusing. And lastly, meso b'chafisa or bedelus kema. If you found the get in these items, then that's an identifying mark. Mai chafisa, what is that? Amar Baba bar Chana chemet ketana. This is a small flask, like a flask that you'd put wine in, and so it's a bag, type of bag. So if you put the get in there, then that's an identifying mark. And mai deluskema tili ka desabeh. This is a purse or a box of the elderly. Elderly people, it's hard for them to find things, so they put all their medications and items, they put it in a box so that they don't lose it. And so that's a place where people keep things safe. And so if the get is found in such an item, and then even after a long time you find it and it's still in that box, then you can be sure that is the same one. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.